even dive in, like this video, share this video, and leave a comment. We always love seeing our viewers, what they think, and if you have any questions for our special guest, attorney Mitch Friedman, Mitchell Friedman. I have two names up here. I don't know what to. We'll dive right in. That's what attorney Stephen Leahy's here for. Anyway, the purpose of this show, though, and the sponsor of this show is Open Tax Advocates, 312-664-6649, or visit chicagotaxteam.com. It's going to be your hub. They'll fight the IRS. Without further ado, here's attorney Stephen Leahy.
Well, thank you, Jim. I appreciate that. A couple things. I also have fightbacknow.com. So go to fightbacknow.com. Sign up for the newsletter. We have the free email newsletter. You can get it every day. You should, if you're owning a business, you should be on the newsletter because I share a lot of great information. And today we're going to be joined with Mitch Friedman. I'm not going to call him Mitchell because I don't know him as Mitchell. I don't think he calls me Steven, do you?
No.
I don't think so. Some people do.
What Mitch he calls you, he can't put over the
air. Mitch is an old friend. I've known Mitch for many years now. Sometimes it's shocking when you think back how long it is. And he's a personal injury attorney. He's got great accolades and a great biography. Look in the description. I'm not going to go through it here today. I'd rather spend our time talking to Mitch. So welcome to the show, Mitch.
Thank you, Steve.
Okay. I always like to start. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Like, where are you from? Where were you born? Where'd you go to school? Things like that.
Okay. Born and raised on Chicago's North Shore. I live there again. My wife of 20 plus years, two boys, one heading off to college, the other still in high school.
Isn't that something?
It is something. Talk about marking time.
Yeah, no kidding.
And I've known you longer than they've been around.
Absolutely.
But not too much.
It's about that. I remember when you got married. I remember when you had your first child. You were young Mitch.
I was
young Steve, though.
We all were once, huh? Yeah. So I went to college in Ohio at Miami of Ohio in the town of Oxford.
What brought you there? Why there?
My mother went there. Said you don't have to go, but you have to check it out and you have to apply. And the next thing you know, mom's right. Ended up in Miami.
Did you like it out there?
I did.
We just had some other guest on here that went to Ohio, and they were saying, the same thing, that their family was from there and they went to Ohio and they really enjoyed it out there. I'm always interested how do you pick the school that you went to? I went to Loyola. How did I pick it? It was the only really university in Chicago that I could go to, so that's why I went there. But I didn't have a lot of choice. But most people have a choice, right? About where they're going to go.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say I didn't have a choice. I could have gone somewhere else. I don't know if they would let me in. But anyway, but it's always interesting to find out why someone goes to the school that they go, because it has such an influence on your life.
It does. I liked it or I wouldn't have gone. I had a bunch of other options. I knew I was planning to come back to Chicago, be in a big city, so I thought I'll go somewhere small in the country for college. And it's a beautiful school, and I just liked it.
Yeah, good.
So it all worked.
Now, did you always know you were going to go to law school?
Pretty much.
Did you? Since high school?
Before high school even. I just always figured I'd probably be a lawyer. I poked around, I looked at other careers and paths, but just kept getting drawn back.
So you went to undergrad, and then did you go right to law school? Did you take some time off?
Went straight through. My feeling was if I took time off, I couldn't have just taken time off and done nothing. I had to work, earn a living, and I felt I'd be successful if I did whatever it was. And I even poked around at some business ideas and opportunities at the job fairs that would come through. But I was afraid I'd go, I'd do well, I'd like it, and I'd never then go back to school.
That's probably true. What was your undergrad? What'd you study?
Political science and economics.
Two good degrees for law school. Many lawyers go that route.
Yeah, perfect entree. Yeah. And then I came back to Chicago. I went to Chicago Kent College of Law.
So I have two sons. One son just became an attorney.
Great.
The other son is in law school right now. What kind of advice would you have for either a third-year law student or someone that's just coming out of law school? What kind of advice would you have for them?
I guess there's two paths. If you know you like X kind of law, you want to do tax and bankruptcy, you want to do personal injury, well, then you got to follow those paths, because my advice for everybody is do what you like, what you love, what you have a passion for, because it's where you're most successful. If you think, well, all the richest people are tech entrepreneurs or they're venture capitalists or whatever, so you go force yourself into that, you may not do well. You may find yourself miserable and not doing well. So if you know you have a path, I would say follow it. It's great if your path happens to bring you the finances you want. Some people don't care. They're happy being whatever it is because they like doing what they're doing. If you don't know, you're in law school because you want flexibility and you're exploring all these classes and you take your torts and you take your criminal and you take your tax and everything and you say, nothing's really doing it. I would say you got to be open-minded and flexible, because as we know, a law degree can take you anywhere.
Absolutely true. And I kind of got out of, because I always like to ask attorneys, what was your first job out of law school?
It was a lawyer.
Where?
It was not an actual secret, but not an advertised thing either. I could not find a job at a plaintiff's personal injury firm.
Did you know that's what you wanted to do?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
So from a while ago, well before even college, I knew I probably wanted to be a plaintiff's personal injury lawyer. And I took the classes in law school and the torts classes and products liability, medical malpractice, more advanced trial classes. It all fit for me. And I clerked at personal injury firms for
while you were in
law school, yeah. And I did a tremendous amount of work there and some great stuff, learned a ton, I still remember. So that's what,
that's key.
It is key. But that's the thing, I can't tell you great details about whatever I learned in tax class or whatever it is, because that's not where I was headed. Knew it well enough, I passed the bar, no problem, but the PI stuff I got. So I wanted to be in the right place. I wasn't just willing to work anywhere. And the jobs that were coming my way or were available at that point, they just weren't right. So I found a defense firm. I was working, they might have even found me, but I was defending personal injury cases. So I was still in the genre, just kind of on the wrong side of the caption, if you will. And that didn't last very long. The way I saw it, I had bosses asking me to do motions that were just totally inappropriate, and I even explained it to them, and whether they knew it or not, I was right. I mean, I know what a venue and what a few other things are, and it wasn't. This is just not it. And so I looked, and not long after there, I found my first personal injury plaintiff's firm, and that's it.
I'm always interested because a lot of times, as you said, you should always follow your passion, right? But a lot of people, and really not people I interview, because most people I interview are attorneys that are on their own and they're doing what they want to do, right? But so many attorneys, when you hear 50% of lawyers are abusing drugs, and no, it's a big number.
Oh, it's terrible.
Right? And then you hear about how a lot of attorneys are unhappy. I think it's because they come out of law school and they take a job, and then that's what they do. They do the job.
Yeah.
And as you said, there's no passion, so then there's no, you just kind of, look at the captions, as you said, and kind of go on your business. So I'm always interested in how that is and how people start doing what they want. And it's not often, especially in law, that people like yourself know what you want to do on the other side. It's like most people get out of law school and have no idea. We all think that we're going to be Perry Mason. I was older, so I knew I wasn't going to be Perry Mason. But many people do, right? They just think it's all the same. When you were in law school, you said you clerked for plaintiffs. You didn't go to. Did you do any moot court or anything like that?
Not moot court. I took a couple trial ad classes. I volunteered as a law clerk for a judge at the Daly Center after my very first year of law school, and that was very eye-opening. Got to see some really interesting behind-the-scenes stuff. Most of what I learned was what not to do. You'd see these lawyers come up to the judge and make the worst arguments, the worst excuses. Just, they would have been better off saying nothing. And you see the judge, it's like, no, what do you know?
And then you heard what the judge said in private about
That's
that.
right, that's right. And so I really learned much more of what not to do in court for a summer.
I think it is important that people understand what the judge is thinking. Right now, my oldest is working for a judge in the law division, tax and miscellaneous. Right, Judge McGinn used to be the chief judge there, and so. But he's telling me the same thing about the lawyers and especially the judges and the back and forth that goes with the judges. That's interesting.
Yeah, and then I did an externship as a class in school, and I was placed with a federal magistrate judge in his chambers for a semester, few days a week, just depending. And that was also good because I got to see it from the federal side. As you know, the Daly Center is a little bit of the Wild West, and I like it because I'm used to it.
Yeah.
The federal side, it's just buttoned down, as you also know.
I do.
Oh, boy.
I do. The first time I walked into a district court, not a magistrate, because they're nice too.
Yeah.
And I do bankruptcy, and bankruptcy, they're nicer courtrooms than Cook County. But you walk into a district judge courtroom, wow, it's impressive. And it's supposed to be impressive.
Yeah.
And the judge sits on that high bench behind in this wonderful, glorious room, 2 stories or 3 stories high. It's just it's a different world.
Yeah.
And of course when you in Cook County you say, hey judge, in federal courts you're not supposed to call him the judge.
I know.
Hey, Your Honor, got to give him all the deference in the world.
Oh yeah.
And everything's, as you said, everything's buttoned down. So it's such a different life.
Yeah. And an example of how I looked at law school, I got an opportunity to do things I knew I didn't want to do for real. So I never wanted to be a criminal prosecutor or a criminal defense attorney, but I did the criminal clinic at Kent for 2 semesters. I think it was at least 2 semesters. Fantastic experience. I mean, they were trying cases. We were in federal court, in fact, while the man who ran the clinic, the attorney who was the defense attorney, he was defending a guy in a federal, attempt murder, drug trafficking case, a huge thing. And we got to see a ton of that. And I got to do it sort of from the safety of the law student side, because whatever happened to him wasn't my doing. I had very little to do with it. It didn't go well for him, but it was never going to go well for him.
Well, criminals in federal court, that doesn't really go. I think
seems like if you ever go to federal court, it's generally you have a problem. There's going to be an issue there.
Well, as we've had the federal court, federal defense attorneys, I have some regulars on the show here, and we talk a lot about that. About once the feds come after you, they've already been looking at you for 100 or 200 days. And they know all. When they start asking you questions, they already think they know the answers to all those questions.
That's right.
Unlike state court, where when a policeman comes in and finds you at the scene of a crime, the feds have been looking at you forever. So and their success rate's like 99% or something like that. So it's very high.
Well, because they only prosecute the cases they think they can win. So funny enough, they win them all.
They win them all.
Yeah. So Attorney Friedman here, I do have a question for you. This goes into this question. When is it worth it to have a lawyer for injury case, right? So many people think they could just handle things themselves. Is there a limit to where I should not have representation?
The answer is there's almost no injury case you should do on your own. Not none, but almost none. I have found over 25 years of being a lawyer and years before that of doing this, that in almost every instance, my clients get more than they would if they did it on their own, even after my fee and whatever expenses I might have, because I get people who come to me. I was talking to X Insurance after the crash. They offered me $1,000. They offered me $2,000. And I'm talking to them, I'm listening, saying, this is crazy. You have a case that's worth $20,000 or whatever it might be. So even when you do the quick math, almost always better off having a personal injury lawyer.
I'm going to ask you about that because I think it's important. And I always like to have when people, because we get people, lawyers can't be experts, so I'm not going to call you an expert. But you've lived this, right? You've seen it so many times, and you've seen people make mistakes. And what's the biggest mistake that you think when people get injured? What do? What's the biggest mistake they make?
Probably the number one biggest mistake is they give a recorded statement to the opposing insurance company or an investigator. And it's not that they're making a mistake by telling the truth. It's that this is an acute situation. They're hurt, they're panicked, their car is destroyed, whatever it is. They're not really in the right frame of mind to be doing it. And they're getting led down a path that on their own they probably wouldn't take, but it's a path that these trained professionals, trained to destroy their cases, lead them down, and the next thing you know, they're saying things they might not otherwise say, and they have no case. It kind of dovetails in with the idea, the mistake of not calling an attorney more or less as soon as possible.
So if I'm listening to this and I got to reach you, what's the best phone number to give you a call at?
773-294-4235.
So I love that answer because that's the truth. Everybody, when people call me and they say, "Hey, I've been injured. What do I do?" And I'm like, first, and I only know this because I know personal injury lawyers, right? Because when I call, they say, "Tell them not to answer any questions." But that's not only with injury. That's with any time for anything. If the IRS comes to your door, don't answer questions. If the Department of Justice comes to your door, don't answer any questions. If the FBI comes to your door, don't answer any questions. If the insurance company calls you after an accident, don't answer any questions.
That's right.
It's just so it's not hard to remember. Don't answer any questions. Get help. Right? It's the truth.
Absolutely. I love what I do for a lot of reasons, but one of them is that I charge a contingency fee, meaning no client ever pays me out of their pocket, no matter how the case goes. And so I literally have clients who are homeless, who are jobless, who are penniless effectively. But I can give them the exact same representation as I give the millionaire down the street who's in a car accident and comes to me, because it doesn't cost them anything up front. So to come to me, to come to any personal injury lawyer, couldn't be sort of an easier decision. It doesn't cost you anything. And really likely, you're going to do better off with a good personal injury lawyer than you ever will on your own. So you make the call early, you get a lawyer, you get the advice, you follow the advice, which not all clients do.
Yeah.
And generally speaking, you have success.
Well, I think that's really good advice, and I know that a lot of people get injured, and then they try to wait it out. Let's see what the insurance company's going to do, and they've been known to try to starve you out, right? They just wait because maybe you can't work because you were injured, right? And then what are you going to do, right? And this becomes part of the problem.
You're 100% right, and the wait it out because maybe they'll offer me enough means you're probably neglecting your medical care and treatment, which doesn't help you physically, doesn't help you mentally probably, and it certainly doesn't help you for your case. And then you're that much more likely to talk to them, give your recorded statement, whatever it is, and take a few short dollars, and then it's over.
Because the law is so technical, you don't know the technicalities. And as you pointed out, I think very, very rightly, they do, right? And so they're trying to ask you questions in such a way that you're going to answer them to their benefit. That's why they're asking you those questions. And you don't even know you're hurting your case. You think, well, I'm going to be honest. I'll just do the right thing. I'm just going to tell them the truth. nobody's ever telling you not to tell the truth. But the way they can color it, because you don't know what they're asking and why they're asking it, that's why a professional like you is so important.
Yeah, an interesting thing that most people probably don't know. I'm going to say they don't. Many insurance companies, especially the larger ones, they have adjusters. These are the people who call and deal with these files, whose only job is to try to get people who do not have lawyers to take short money, meaning very little money for their case, because once you sign away that release or you take that money, you cash it, it's over. So they can get you to take $1,000 to $5,000. They're scot-free. You've ruined your case. You've sold it for nothing. And then you come to me and I say, well, I'd love to help you. You had a $50,000 case, except you sold it for $5,000 and it's over.
It's over.
And when I get involved, I call that adjuster. Oh, okay, well, now it gets transferred to the adjuster that deals with lawyers. And all of a sudden, they have authority for that kind of money. Whereas the people who deal with lay people, the people who are injured, not lawyers, they have very little authority, and their job is to jam it on you and get you gone.
That's great information for people to know, right? And so you know the guy you're talking to, he's trying to jam it down you and give you as little as money as possible. Now, again, you can't really blame the insurance company for trying to pay you less than you deserve, but you can blame yourself for not following. Okay, if you're listening today, make sure you call somebody. Don't answer questions. I want to pound that home because it's so important.
Yeah.
Right.
And as many people can see on the screen, Attorney Mitchell Friedman's phone number is below. If you know anybody who has been in an accident, if you get in an accident, and I think it's important too, because we've had personal injury attorneys on the Trust Radio Network before. Take this phone number, save it in your phone. So if you get in an accident, because that's what accidents are, right? You never know when it's going to hit. Save it in your phone so that way you have somebody you can call. And I kind of going back on it and right when we asked earlier, when is it important to get a personal injury attorney? Let me ask you this, Attorney Friedman. When you get in an accident, it's going to be like that, right? You're not in the right frame of mind. It's going to be lickety-split quick. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
You're so right. And your point about saving a phone number, I couldn't agree more. My phone number, it's my business line, but it's also one that you can send a text message to. So many people these days want to communicate by text, send pictures by text, whatever it is. It just makes it easier. We have the technology, so I'm as client and technology friendly as I can be to make it easy for people to get me the information so that they can help me help them.
So we have your number on the screen, but tell us your number. Tell us your phone number.
773-294-4235.
So again, put it on your phone. You don't know when you're going to need help, and you don't want to be Googling looking for a lawyer when you get injured,
because you're not going to think about it. You're coming out of the accident. You're like, you're in the ambulance going, oh my gosh, and it really will happen that quickly too. Where all of a sudden people are giving you calls. What happened here? What happened here?
And I think a show like this is so important because you meet Mitch. You see what kind of man he is. You don't see it's not an ad, right? Ads are designed to influence you, rightly or wrongly. Here with a long interview, you meet Mitch. You get to hear about his background. You get to hear about and again, I think the biggest thing, passion, right? And the passion of what you do.
I love what I do.
It's so important.
I wouldn't do it if I didn't. I've told people this for years who say, oh, do you like doing what you do? And I said, at least in my view, if I didn't really like it or love it, I would have gotten out of this a long time ago.
What's been your experience now? You're solo, I guess, now, right?
Yes.
So what's been your experience going that route, and what's changed in your practice because of that, and how much more decisions do you have to make because of that?
It's been the best thing ever for me. We're going to have to put aside, wife and children, which they have their own category.
I
but it's been amazing. I worked for almost 20 years at law firms, a few years with one, and then another where you knew me for, I think it was 17 and a half years. I learned so much. It was a fantastic place. I got to work on so many cases, and it completely prepared me for the next step, which is where I am now. 4 years on my own, sole practice. I have assistants. I have my own office. I get to decide what I do, where I do, when I do. And so I have lots of decisions to make, as you well know. Not twice as many as I made before, but enough more. And I may very well be working on my computer at 9 at night or 6 in the morning or whatever it is, because I'm sort of always working. Wake up with cases in my head.
This is what business owners do, right? As you are a business owner. That's what business owners do. You're always working because that's your passion. So that's what you're thinking about all the time. I know that's me, right? I think of, if I'm not thinking about a case, then I'm thinking about how do I get the next one? How do I help? And you know, how do I help people? And I know that it's kind of the people don't believe it, but many lawyers like yourself, right? You're really trying to help people, aren't you?
Absolutely. There's no question about it. I ask my clients all the time, how are you feeling? Are you getting medical treatment? Do you need to see another doctor? And I've been able to say, wait a minute, you're telling me you have this, that, and this going on, but you haven't gone back and seen your doctor. Why don't you go make an appointment? Figure out what's going on. It happens to serve the most important purpose, which is them actually getting medical care and getting better. Secondarily, it usually helps their case anyway. So go find out what's wrong and get better so you're not miserable.
That's great advice. And I get, you probably know this, right, is that I was injured before I became an attorney. I got a lawyer who helped me tremendously. And the best advice I got, right, because I was an iron worker, right? How you doing? Fine. It's not a big deal. It's like, you try to fight through it. And
my spine's just sticking through my back.
I know. It's like, put a little dirt on there. I'll be fine. The best advice I got was, you can't suffer in silence, right? Because you're hiding the truth. How is your doctor going to know unless you tell him? And then how is it going to get into the jury if you go that far if you don't say something? And so then you're at the jury and you say, hey, I was hurting all along. And they say, well, you told your doctor you were fine. It's like, wait a minute. But I was just trying to muscle it up. But it's like, well, how did I know that? Right? So don't suffer in silence. Tell the doctor, and that's best for your recovery anyway. Of course. To be honest.
How can a doctor treat you if you don't tell them what's wrong?
It's exactly true, and I think that's such a great. And so talk a little bit about some people that you have helped, and the change because obviously you affect their life, going forward, right? Someone gets injured, maybe they can't ever work again, and that's what they fear, right? And so they're hoping for someone like you to come help them get what they're entitled to.
Yep.
Talk a little bit about that.
I'll tell you, the first thing that comes to mind, a case I had that resolved just a few months ago, and I'll keep it generic enough.
Sure.
2 foreign students, they were engaged, man and a woman engaged, mid-20s, came over to get some graduate degrees, already had some level of work experience and whatnot back home in the Far East, and they're here and they have to do something to make some money while they do a little bit of sort of remote work back home, but they can only do so much. So they are driving a truck, pulling a big trailer, and they're hauling loads for like one of their cousin's friends who has this company, pays them to do this. Great. So early morning, they're up in far northwestern suburbs here. They got it's a big pickup truck with a big trailer, and they're driving down a country road. It's like 6 in the morning. They're gonna go get an oil change and stuff. And it's a little kind of hilly country road, and they're coming along. The man's driving, his fiance sitting in the passenger seat, and he looks ahead and he sees a car coming at them in their lane on this 2-lane country road. He swerves to the left into what would be oncoming traffic, but there's no traffic. And the car, at the last second, pulls a little bit to the left, comes by and clips the side of their truck, takes the mirror off, scrapes it a little bit, keeps going down the road, drives off, gone. Well, when he came into the left lane, my client, he hit these little hills, he starts bounding over, he can't control this truck, he runs off the road, through like a little grove of trees, and then they hit a big tree dead on, the big,
ouch,
right in the front of the truck. Smash everything. And they get out, they're both terribly hurt, ambulance comes. They both have fractures in their spine, their vertebrae. They end up in the hospital for 4 or 5 days with multiple vertebral fractures. They're here without family, without anything, without insurance. Now what little work they could do, they can't do. They're in desperate straits. And they got my number from someone I know, and I was able to go out there. I went and visited them. I go to their apartment up in the far suburbs, and on the table is 15 pill bottles, plus minus, because they're on all this medication for all these things. He's in a plastic back brace that he can almost never take off. She's in like a Velcro back brace she's not supposed to take off. They're hardly sleeping. They're disasters, and you can't blame them. They're just really hurt badly. So I had to first do some more investigation into what really happened, because what I told you happened is me figuring out in hindsight. It wasn't clear at first that the vehicles actually touched each other, and I found evidence to show that, which allowed a certain type of insurance coverage to apply that otherwise would not have. And then I needed to monitor their medical treatment, because now they're here, and are they going to get seen in follow-up? Because again, they have no insurance, they have no money. The hospital and the doctors were actually amazing. They continued to see them for follow-up, give them x-rays they needed, because these two were in dire straits. And I visited them a few times, and slowly they would heal and get better. And finally, I did have to help them find a place that would give them some therapy, give them some MRIs, and you do it on what's called a lien, which means those treaters have a legal claim to a portion of that settlement, and I have to settle up with them literally and figuratively after it's over, make sure that they get paid back for their good work. I was able to get both of them the maximum amount available under the insurance, take care of all the bills that were out there, and put really a life-changing amount of money into their pockets for what they lost.
Yeah.
It wasn't that they were having a windfall. They had lost a lot monetarily, emotionally, physically, and they'll never be quite the same.
I think it's so important, but here's one thing I want you to talk a little bit about, because you mentioned it, and that's in your story, and how it had such an effect on the outcome. Investigating. Talk a little bit about how important that is in your line of work, right? That you have to investigate, because it's like, it's not always apparent what happened.
That's right. And it's another reason people need to call a lawyer early, because evidence, no matter who goes for it or doesn't, evidence disappears, memories fade, people move, the phone doesn't work anymore, the video from the camera on the corner, well, that's automatically overwritten 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks later, so it's gone. So when you call me 6 months later after an incident, I say, I'll do my best to help you, but all the video's gone. And I'll try to find these witnesses, and we use private investigators like lots of businesses, skip trace and say, oh, well, he changed his phone number, so maybe we can find a witness. Police generally do a good job, depends on the jurisdiction, depend on the incident, but there's always holes. And nobody's going to investigate a case like a vested attorney will. I have a vested interest in looking to figure out what happened for my clients, for my business, personally. And so that's the road we take. And when people call me and there's a need to get on it, I'm on it that day. I'm not waiting until the next day or the next day. It's a Friday afternoon. I don't care. I'm on it that day if it requires me to be on it that day.
I love that, because again, that's another aspect of your job that I think people don't really realize. You know, lawyers don't just come in and present, stand before a jury. They present all these facts to the jury that they have to discover. Right? Nobody's telling you what's going on.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, the people who hurt, they don't know. It just kind of happened.
Yeah.
It's like, what happened? I don't know.
You do get that. It's another thought about law school. So you learn a lot in law school, and you have to go to law school to be a lawyer, not just because I think virtually every state requires it, although there's a few that
I think California you can get in if you don't go to law school, but it's harder.
It's harder, and it should be. And frankly, I don't even know that it should be allowed, because
if you're smart enough to do it without going to law school, you should go to law school.
I agree. What you learn there gives you a foundation, but you do not learn how to be a practicing any kind of lawyer through law school. It's different than medical school, where you actually go in and do residencies and internships and you actually learn it. It's not at all like that. Until you get into a firm, whether you're an intern, an extern, you're watching it, you're in a clinic, then you start seeing more. Wait a minute, there's all this stuff that goes on, and a lot of times there isn't that much practice of law, as they say, that goes into a case. But when you need it, you gotta have it, because if you don't, you're going nowhere.
I agree with you. And I said, when you say about the practice of law, when you're doing something like you're doing, and you've been doing it for 25 years, I don't want to say you're not practicing anymore, right? Because you've done this. You're not venturing off into some new law, that you're not familiar with. Now things change and laws change and different standards have come up, and you have to stay up to date with what's going on. But you're not learning, again, you're not learning all over again.
No,
right?
you're exactly right.
And so that's why it's so important to get somebody that's been around for a while. Generally when I'm interviewing attorneys, they've been around for a while, and again, most of them work for themselves, and there's something to say about that, right? So now have a think about that. Now I'm going to ask you a question that I love to ask attorneys. What do you think makes a good attorney?
Put them on the spot there.
Yeah, right. A Friday afternoon. Yeah. I'll let it go. I think that...
Well, you have a lot of interaction with other attorneys, right?
I do,
The defense attorneys. You've seen the way... Now, like for me, I don't see people that do what I do, right? Because I don't deal with them. Mm-hmm. I deal with the other side, right? Like you deal with the defense attorneys, right? So you have the same people you see often, but you have an opportunity to see what other people do in court and what they do.
Well, and I've worked with many lawyers in my firm.
Yes.
I co-counsel with lawyers today. Depending on the case, people ask me to come in and help them out with something that has gotten too big or too complicated, whatever it might be.
And I'm sure your goal is to be a good attorney, right?
Absolutely, every day. So one thing, and it's not any one thing, but dedication and actually caring about what you're doing, those go a long way. If you're not dedicated to your case, to doing that investigation, to following the discovery and litigation, to get every piece of evidence you need to have, it's not going to be the same success.
Well, I think, and I see a common theme in our discussion here today, and I'm going to go back to it: passion, right? And so I would think that makes a good attorney, don't you think?
Absolutely.
Be passionate about what you do.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go back to what I said earlier: is about helping people.
Yes.
I think it comes down, because I'm not an attorney, I don't really understand how the system works. Do all cases, personal injury cases, go to trial? Is that how I would imagine it's like the TV shows, correct? Is it exactly like movies?
That is a great question and a good point of view that most people come to me with and don't know. And the answer is, most cases don't even get filed in court at all, let alone go all the way through the court system and have to go to trial. So in my current practice, I can settle 95+% of my cases without ever filing a lawsuit, which saves time and it saves money. And the reason the money's important is because the money comes out of the client's end of the settlement. So if I can spend half as less in expenses, well, that's half the expenses a client has to pay out of a settlement. And the time is also a factor. Now, once you're in litigation is hard. A lot of people think, oh, let's go get them, let's sue them. And then they have to answer all the written questions. And then they have to give a deposition where they really don't like it. And so most people, average person, doesn't want to do that. As to cases going to trial, well, the ones that even get to litigation, it's a very low percentage. I can tell you the last statistic I knew for Cook County Law Division, downtown Chicago, the larger cases where I practice, it's less than 3% of cases that go to trial.
Really? But again, I'm going to talk a little bit about this because, and like you comment on, but that also goes to your investigation, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're finding things out that the insurance company doesn't help them, now they're gonna settle. If I don't do the investigation and I don't know, they don't want to settle.
Yeah.
Right? Is that right? That's why it goes
you're
back
right.
to what you were talking
and
about.
I've got one going on right now. I've got a case where a client was coming out of a house, going to walk down the front stairs. Well, the front stairs had no handrail. And he tripped just because he tripped, but you're supposed to have a handrail. And this is in the city of Chicago since the early 1970s. Every building, inside and out, with I think more than what they call 4 risers, just think of it as 4 steps, was required to have a handrail. There's no grandfathering. You couldn't say, well, this is a 100-year-old house. It doesn't matter. You got to put on handrails. Why? Because it's an extreme safety measure. And we all know this. And the insurance company, I did my research, and then they come back to me and say, oh no, we're not at fault. They didn't have to have handrails. I said, based on what? And they told me what their thinking was. And I said, give me a little bit. I wrote them a long letter. I put every code section in. This just went out to them 2 days ago, so I'm waiting to hear back. But they have no ground to stand on because I spoke to a consultant who deals in architecture and engineering, and he looked at it and said, yeah, here's the problem, and here's what it is, and here's the code section. This is what we do.
Yeah, well, that's, again, the investigation is so important.
Yep.
You know, and having the right guy who's going to do the investigation, so important. And again, you get better settlements for your client when you do the investigation. Isn't that right?
That's right. And if I can do enough of that investigation without ever having to even file a lawsuit, like in this case, because the stairs are there, they're outside stairs on the street. I can go and take pictures. I can know what's going on without ever going on the property. Well, then again, I can save my client the time, money, hassle, and everything else of litigation if I can convince the insurance company to do the right thing without having to make them.
Yeah, pay the man.
That's right.
That's so important. All this stuff is so important, and I going back and thinking about again, going back to your clients, because that's really what the focus is, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Talk a little bit about that, about how you think, lawyers, I think, get a bad rap, right? And that lawyers are just looking for money, right? Lawyers sometimes get paid well, that's true, but they do a service for people that they really need, and it's such a in front of a jury or going to take it's such a skill that very few people have. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. It's difficult. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot to stay up on it. It's all client focused, and absolutely lawyers get a bad rap. And frankly, personal injury lawyers probably get the worst rap. It's never really bothered me because I know the reality.
Yeah.
And just like a lot of things in life, the people who are the most vocal about it and the most vehement, this and that, they are the first ones to call you when anything happens to them. They're the ones who want the most money, who want to stretch any situation as far as they can. And this is how the world usually works.
Yeah. I want to point out, and you mentioned the handrail, mm-hmm. right? That there's this rule that there should be handrails. And, that rule came up probably because people were injured and had to sue, right? And so I think a lot of times one of the services that attorneys like yourself really provide the public is correcting things that are hurting people. and trying to prevent it from happening in the future. Don't you think, though?
I don't just think, I know. There's simply no question about it. And one of those things I remember from law school, one of the purposes of the civil tort system, a tort, example, personal injury, it's the most well-known one, where you're sort of wronged. The civil system has always looked at these wrongs, and there's been, let's say, no government regulation. Back when cars were first coming around, there's a bunch of famous automobile cases with people getting injured or killed because there was no regulation about the this or the that, and you'd see it happening again. So you step in and you file a lawsuit as long as the law's there, or if you can help create new law, carve out an exception, find a new lane because it's there, it's patently unsafe. The manufacturer should know it. The builder should know it. We have plenty of studies. You pull hospital records. How many people are falling downstairs and breaking their legs or breaking their necks? And so it becomes really obvious a long time ago.
Yeah.
You need handrails, or you need steering wheels that don't have razor sharp circles in the middle.
And the cushioned deck.
The dashboard. The soft dashboards.
Yeah.
All these things. And so civil lawyers, in particular personal injury lawyers, fill in a little bit of that gap. And I have represented many, many, many injured construction workers. Many, too many to count. And I've had a couple of them come back and tell me, hey, you guys, you're making construction sites safer. Because we get a hold of these safety manuals, we look at what's happening, we're grilling the people who are supposed to be keeping these places safe, and we're exposing how they're not, how there's a gap in whatever safety they're supposed to be doing, a failure of oversight, whatever it means. They don't want to be sued. Their insurance companies don't want to have to pay money. So now they have to have better safety manuals. They have to have better safety training, and less people are getting hurt. I mean, in some minor way that doesn't bother me whatsoever, we work ourselves out of some cases. But I'd much rather these folks, like the iron workers who used to be and I used to know, don't get hurt in the first place. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, anyone who drives these days knows there's terrible, terrible drivers. There are crashes every day, all over the place. There's unsafe premises with people falling and getting hurt. I can only affect so many and fix so many of these things. People are going to get hurt no matter what I do. And when it happens, I'll be there to help them. And if not, then not.
That is such a, again, I think
that's why it's so important to save that phone number that you see below, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure you save that phone number in your phone. I think it's interesting because I was listening to a podcast the other day where somebody was talking about, how people remember things, right? And the guy breaks it down. He goes, people don't remember details in traumatic situations very well, but they remember themes, right? Like the guy was tall. The guy was big, instead of just like, oh, he had a button on his lapel on the left side, because things get wild and confusing. So that's why it's so important to save that phone number. When you are in, and again, we talk so much about car crashes, or because that's just generally what's going to happen, right? You're going to be driving, you're going to be out in public. Traumatic events happen. You won't know what to do because you're all over the place and you have no idea what's left or right. Save the phone number in your phone so that way you have somebody to turn to. Absolutely. When you make an important decision.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that was such an important part. Now, because people, we always hear about this. He was just awarded X amount of dollars, and people say, "Wow, that's big money." Wow, but nobody wants to say, "I'll take that injury for that money." Okay?
I don't think I've ever had a client who said, oh, I'm okay with the money and the injury, and they wouldn't have traded it away.
Yeah.
They trade it away every time. They would rather not be hurt and have to go through what you have to go through.
Because in order to get a lot of money, that tells you were really injured.
I will tell clients sometimes, listen, you don't have $1 million case here, but that's a real good thing for you.
Yes.
Because if you did, you would have been much more injured.
Great point. Great point. And again, I think that's a great point that you just made. I've never had a client that said, "I'd rather have the money, than my health."
Yeah.
See, that's a great, because we always used to joke working downtown. It's like, oh well, it's a tough day at work. It's like, that step in front of that bus might be a good idea. I could use the cash, but reality, no, you don't.
No, you don't.
You don't want that. And again, it's all joking aside. Things hit every day.
And you hear about these big verdicts, but the big verdicts generally mean someone was really catastrophically hurt.
Absolutely.
And their life will never be the same. And no amount of money can make that right.
No, I mean, I think about the biggest cases I've worked on, and there's simply no question. It's not even close. They would have traded every penny of that and more to have avoided that injury.
And we talk about wrongful death, right? And so they look at the families walking away with, but they don't have him there anymore, or her, right? They're gone.
Yep.
Wrongfully taken from you.
Yeah.
And that's, again, somebody's mother, someone's father, someone's, loved one.
Yeah.
And no amount of money can make that better.
No.
Right? It just can't. So I think it was you were very enlightening today. It was a great discussion. Again, the people, you think about personal injury lawyers, I think one thing Mitch has helped us all kind of know is that they're really caring about their clients and the people that are injured. And the people that are injured need help. That's why we need Mitch.
So we're coming to the end here, Attorney Mitchell Friedman. If you could just take a second here, we're going to get you on here. One last thing you want everybody listening to, if they're going to come away with one piece of information, what's the most important piece of information coming away from this little discussion here today?
I don't know if I boil it down to just one. The first thing I want to say is that people need to take care for their own safety. Drive smart. I'm driving here today on the highway. It's raining. It's a little wet. I'd actually just seen a video earlier today that warned people about driving slow when it's wet because you try to stop, you hydroplane, you crash. I literally saw the aftermath of some SUV running off the highway in the ditch. They were all gone and presumably, hopefully okay, I have no idea, but it looked like a one-car thing where they just weren't driving safely. So if you drive defensively, you drive for conditions, you take care for yourself. When you're walking, watch where you're walking, watch where you're looking. You get people falling off cliffs, taking selfies, crazy things these days.
Yeah.
Watch for your own safety. Now, you can't avoid everything. People who are sitting stopped for a red light and get rear-ended, well, you can't do anything. So that's when the first thing you do is get emergency help, police, fire, ambulance if you need. You get your, medical care and treatment that's right away. But in the middle of that transaction, you find yourself a good personal injury lawyer so that before the insurance company's there, getting involved and perhaps hiding away or spoiling evidence or witnesses, you can have someone...
They wouldn't do that.
No, God forbid. But might have happened once or twice, and you don't want it to happen to you.
Exactly.
So you get someone who can be on your side right away.
Such a great piece of advice.
Thank you.
Such a great piece of advice.
And that's why it's so important. We'll say it one more time. That phone number you see below, ladies and gentlemen, put that in your phone and save it. That's Attorney Mitchell Friedman's line. If you are in an accident, if you need a personal injury attorney, you're hurt on the job type deal, save that phone number in your phone. Because again, you never know when you might need it.
I want to say, Jim,
I'm putting it in mine.
and he said you could text them.
Yeah.
Right? People text them.
Jim, you can text me. Anyone can text me.
So text them. Right, and then say, "What should I do?" Right, and get some good advice. Okay? That's what people, and I think that's what people need most: good advice from someone who knows what he's talking about. And that's why we had Mitch Friedman on today. I want to thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Steve.
It was a great discussion.
It was fun.
Again, I thought that's why I love to talk. I love interviewing attorneys because I learn so much. It's such a big, and I enjoy it so very much. Learning and especially teaching others what they need to know.
Yeah.
And that's the big thing. And a lot of this stuff, as you talked about today, has to, just being informed and someone like yourself, tell him maybe you should do this, right? And you didn't have to go search out this advice. We presented it here for you today. So thanks so much for joining us, Mitch. We're going to be back. We're not going to be here next week. Next week is...
We'll do something next week because it's the 4th of July, but it's not going to be with a guest.
No guest. I think our next guest is going to be Ray Kaplan.
I believe so, yes.
Ray Kaplan's going to be on Friday after that. So join us for Ray Kaplan.
I can't believe it's already the 4th of July.
I know.
You
know what happens after the 4th of July, Jim?
Summer's over.
I probably
Get out of here. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, remember Open Tax Advocates is the sponsor of this show. Attorney Mitch Friedman, one more time. Let's get that phone number as we put it up here so that everybody can see. What's the best number to call you?
773-294-4235.
Awesome. Again, remember too, as I said before, I'll say it again, Open Tax Advocates is there for you should you need any assistance fighting the IRS. Ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank you so much for tuning in. Remember, next week we're going to have, we'll have a little special thing for the 4th, but next guest is coming up. What did we say? Attorney Ray Kaplan was the next guest. That's going to be down the line. But remember, like this video, share this video, like the page if you're on Facebook. Just tell all your friends and family to save Attorney Mitchell Friedman's phone number in their phone should they ever need it. So again, thanks so much for tuning in. You all have